Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple of these yellow buckets that have African nightcrawler worms living in them. The African nightcrawlers have been in here for now 218 days, and their last check-in was 12 days ago. These are pretty busy systems, or at least it appears that way when we dig in and we start tilling around in order to make space for their next feeding. We did a little bit of a test over here in these systems, and that's the reason bucket number 2 is the one that is a little bit behind as far as feedings go. Last time we checked in here, bucket number 2 got feeding number 16, bucket number 1 was already up to feeding number 20, and that's because we did a little set it and forget it test over here in bucket number 2. But I think, that was quite a while ago. I think day 100 was when we decided to end that test, and that was over 100 days ago now. So any sort of residual appearance that was caused by us having done the set it and forget it test in these systems appears to have over time vanished right down to what appears to be the level in the systems. They seem to be pretty much equal now. I'm thinking that we're probably going to have to excavate a pretty good sized feeding hole to drop all this stuff into. I mean, only half of this is going to go to each of the buckets. But besides this, I've also got some pizza crust. I've soaked it in water to try to soften it up because it is pretty hard, and bread, in my experience, always benefits from being dampened before being placed into the worm bins. Man, look at all those nice, beautiful castings. I tell you, it's been 12 days since we last checked in, but I do sort of remember it being a fairly generous feeding. But that is always nice to open up your bin, and as long as there's plastic causing the recirculation of moisture and the top surface is nice and damp and inviting for the worms to hang out, they'll be there, and they'll be dropping their castings as they come and go. So we did pile in a good bit of bedding material with the last feeding, a good generous handful of shredded paper and cardboard onto which all the foods were placed. Before we excavate the middle and drop in the food, I thought we might just do a little further exploratory excavation of the outer edges. I do remember something about me wanting to possibly start running these systems without those plastic coverings because moisture seemed a bit high. Sometimes when the stuff sticks to my glove and doesn't just roll off, it makes me wonder if perhaps there's too much moisture. But I think that as long as there's what we might consider to be too much moisture, I think the worms are the most content. So I'm actually wondering if perhaps the best method for letting these systems dry off a little bit would be to actually empty them into perhaps a couple bus boxes where there'd be a much greater surface area and the material could be in there much more shallow, allowing for some of its moisture to exit through evaporation. So I don't know. I mean, we are beyond 200 days of age. This system right here, feeding 21, already kind of puts it into an age range that makes me think that perhaps it is time to start thinking about getting these worms removed from their environment and get them working on some fresh stuff, and then we could harvest their lovely castings. I am finding little pockets of shredded paper cardboard. I even positioned my supply of prepared bedding right behind me to put in perhaps another generous handful. But accompanying feeding number 20 with yet more material that may or may not break down in a fairly short period of time does give me pause, I must admit. But I've got a funny feeling that we put a little bit of my prepared shredded paper cardboard mix down in here with the feeding. It's got a pretty good chance of getting broken down pretty quickly. So I think we're going to go for it. We're going to give them a little bit of my prepared bedding, and then we'll drop in their portion of food for the day. My prepared bedding, I just replenished, so I've got a little bit of the stuff that was prepared a while ago. It's darker, but then when you get over to the light stuff, that's the newly prepared stuff. I guess, whoa, okay. I just managed to get a really large handful. And it does kind of make me wonder if perhaps after this one we might want to start restricting the application of bedding a bit, just so that the worms have an opportunity to break it all down and, you know, leave the castings a little less littered with stuff that's not worm manure. Let them break down all the little scraps of residual stuff. So it's pretty cool to see how the bread has soaked up pretty much all the water that was sitting in this little container. So let's leave it at that. I think by doing this, we've given ourselves enough material over here on the edges with which to hopefully get this feeding nice and covered up. Yeah, almost covered up, close to it. It does feel like I can sort of peek through little holes and see the traces of the food that they got, but you know, that's a-okay. I don't think it's going to be a problem. Very nice, very nice. That one pretty quick. I'm just wondering, it makes me feel like, did I forget something? I don't know. Probably not. I think we're in good shape. Although, you know, after I'm done here and putting things away, that's probably when it's going to occur to me what sort of major important thing I omitted from this check-in. But then it'll be too late. I guess before bucket number 1 got all tilled up and loaded with fresh bedding and food, it did seem to me like bucket number 2 over here was a little bit higher up as far as the level of the material within the system. Got to remember, when we did set it and forget it, this thing was loaded right up to the rim with leaves, so that during that 7-week period when there was no interaction with the system, that they would have sufficient bedding and food and everything else that they need to get by while they're being sort of ignored. So the same deal happened here last time. We've been pretty consistent ever since set it and forget it in terms of feeding portions and assortments. So down here too, we're going to see some shredded paper cardboard residue from the application of bedding last time. I guess my one main key observation here, as I'm just going through here casually, looking at how things are, but also trying to use my sense of touch to gauge what's common or similar, what's different. It does almost seem to me like this system has a little bit less moisture content somehow. I mean, down low it's a little bit stickier and damper, but perhaps not so much that it's all sticking to my hands. So I think this stuff on the back might be throwing us off here, but it does feel like this material is flaking away from my glove a little bit more readily, suggesting that perhaps moisture levels in here are not quite as high. I mean, the difference would be minimal, you know, so I'm just saying that the difference does seem to be enough that I can notice it, but probably not such that, you know, in the interest of keeping things synchronized and in harmony with each other, I don't think I would react or try to compensate for it. It just seemed notable as long as I'm gabbing anyway. Very nice. Lots and lots of nice, really nice castings material accumulating in these buckets. The last time we ran these buckets, they reached exactly 1/2 of a year of age. So if you take 364, cut that in half, that's how you're left with 182, which is commonly the marker at which you hit 26 weeks. You can kind of consider yourself as being halfway through a 1-year period, except for years like this. This video is being prepared in a leap year, so we have 1 extra day. But commonly, 182 is what I consider to be half a year. So in with a little bit of bedding. Here I'm wondering if we're going to end up with as large a amount. Somehow it just felt to me like that amount that was coming out when I gripped it, it was like hanging on to all this extra material that came along for the ride. So somehow it just seemed to me like we were getting a lot of bedding, but I think on this one we were able to give them a little bit less than they got over in bucket number 1. These guys look like they might have gotten a little bit additional melon too, perhaps by 2 or 3 pieces, so lucky them. All right, that's it for our check-in, everyone, with the now 218-day yellow buckets. Definitely getting up there. Since they don't reside out on my shelving system amidst all my other bins, I kind of lose track of where they fit in as far as their age, but they're getting up there, you know, as far as, you know, seniority, if you want to think of it that way. All right, everyone, that's it for the check-in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.